So Earth's moon's phases. The lunar cycle takes about 29.5 days and begins with the new moon. Now, the new moon, basically what we see is pretty much nothing. You might see a hollow outline of the moon, but in the top right corner, that's what we see. We can't really see much of the moon. It's not there. And again, that's because the lit half of the moon, if you look at this picture, isn't facing us. It's facing the sun like it always is. But if you were standing here on Earth looking out at the moon, you only see that dark half. And that's why for the new moon, it's the start of the lunar cycle. The moon is in between the Earth and the sun. None of the lit side is facing the Earth, and there appears to be no moon. That's the new moon phase. This is the beginning of the cycle. So the beginning of the cycle always begins when we can't see the moon, and then it's just only going to get bigger from there. Yeah. A waxing crescent moon. So this comes after the new moon. Waxing means growing brighter. So anytime you see waxing in the title of a moon phase, it means it's going to continue to get brighter. Crescent just means that less than half of that surface that we see is lit. So if you look at what we see, you can see the halfway mark. There's still darkness on the right side of it, so this has to be a crescent. There appears to be a small sliver on the moon's right side. Now here's a key thing. That right side is critical for identifying your crescent correctly. And here's a way that you can remember that. When the right is light, it's getting more bright. So anytime that right-hand side of the moon is lit up for us, that's a waxing moon. It means it's going to continue to grow brighter. So when the right is light, it's getting more bright. That's a waxing crescent moon if we can't see half it. And the way that it looks in space is if you were standing on Earth and you're looking out at this moon, you can see a small sliver on that right-hand side, but most of it is still that darkness. That dark side is facing the Earth, and that's why we only see a small sliver of it. Now you might be thinking to yourself, Ms. Berg, this looks like the left-hand side. Why are we seeing the right-hand side here? This is one of the hardest things to really visualize in a 3D model, but what's happening is you need to think of your perspective. If you were standing on this Earth and you rotate your body so that you can see this moon, it's actually the right-hand side that's lit up. You should try it at home if you can. If you can't, or if you're having a hard time, maybe you rotate your device so that you are standing at the moon or at the Earth and you're looking out at the moon. The first quarter moon. Take a look at what we see in that upper right-hand corner. This occurs when we're halfway between the new moon and the full moon. Waxing, again, means growing brighter. The first quarter moon is a waxing moon. And the way I know that is because the right side is lit. Anytime that right side is lit, that is a waxing moon. Quarter, the reason why we call it a first quarter and not a first half is because it's a quarter of the way through the lunar cycle. Yeah, so it's 1/4 of the way through that 29.5-day lunar cycle. That's why it's called a first quarter. The right half appears to be lit. Again, that's how we know it's the first quarter or a waxing moon. And again, when the right is light, it's getting more bright. And you can see in this picture in the bottom right-hand corner how the moon, we can see half and half. If we were looking from the Earth, we could see half of the dark side, half of the lit side. We can't see this bottom half. It's not facing us. There's no way to see it. It's like looking at someone's face and then being like, oh, I can see the back of your head. No, you can't. It's not facing you. So, just keeping that in mind. A waxing gibbous moon. This is between the first quarter moon and the full moon. Waxing, again, means growing brighter. If this is a waxing moon, that means the right side is bright again. Gibbous means swollen or humpbacked. So what we're seeing here is it's more than half full, but it's not quite fully full. So that's what a gibbous is. Anytime it's more than half full, but not quite full, boom, that's a gibbous moon. So this is when most of the right side appears to be lit, but it's not quite full. Again, when the right is light, it's getting more bright. If you look at the picture in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see that this moon, we can now see a fair amount of this lit half from Earth, but still a little bit of that dark half is getting in the way of us seeing that full moon. Full moon. This is when the Earth is in between the sun and the moon. The whole lit half of the moon is completely visible, which is why we see in that upper right-hand corner that beautiful cratered moon, which, is pretty cool. This is halfway through the lunar cycle, and the moon will start to appear less over the next like 14.5 days. Waning gibbous moon, again, this is between the full moon and the last quarter. Waning means to decrease in size. So anytime waning's in the title, it means we're going to be seeing less and less of the moon. Recall that gibbous means swollen or humpbacked. So a waning gibbous is going to be when it's still more than half full, but it's going to start getting smaller every day. And remember, the moon itself isn't physically getting smaller. It's just we're not seeing as much of it. So most of the left side appears to be lit. When the left is on display, it's going away, and that would be a waning moon. If you look at this picture in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see, oh, look at that moon. It's still going around in its cycle. We can still see most of the lit half, but this tiny sliver of the dark side is getting into our view, which is why we can't see the whole moon. The third or last quarter, so this is halfway between the full moon and the new moon. Waning. This is a waning moon, and the way that I know is because the left-hand side is lit, which means it's going to continue to decrease in size. Again, it's a quarter moon because it's another quarter of the way through the lunar cycle. The third quarter, or last quarter moon, indicates that we are starting the final quarter of our lunar cycle. If the left half appears to be lit, then the left is on display, and it's going away. So that just means we're going to be seeing less and less of the moon. A waning crescent moon, halfway between the full moon and the new moon. Waning, remember, it's decreasing in size, so we're going to see less of the moon tomorrow night. A quarter moon, I don't know why it says quarter, but a crescent moon means that a small sliver is going to be visible. The left half appears to be lit. Now that's the main difference between a waning crescent and a waxing crescent. Which side can you see? If you can see the left side, then it's going away. It's a waning crescent moon. Why can we see the moon sometimes during the day? Ooh, I get this question a lot, and that's a good question. You can see in this picture that, sometimes during the day we can see almost a quarter moon. And the reason for that is half of the lunar cycle occurs when the sun is in position, so it can be seen during daylight hours. Waning crescents are seen near sunrise. So if you look at the picture, I've got it circled, you have a waning crescent, and at the time that a waning crescent is visible, most of that occurs during daylight hours. You would be standing on the daylight side in order to see it. And that's why we see it during the day, or right around the sunrise period. Right around 6 a.m. is when we can typically see that waning crescent. Waxing crescents we see near sunset. It's on the other side, right when the sun is going down. We should be able to see that waxing crescent and maybe a little bit into the nighttime, but you're not going to see it super late. Those are going to be really close to that sunset. Waxing gibbous are near sunset, and they're going to be a little bit after sunset. So you should be able to see them right around it, but then you'll see it later into the evening as well. A waning gibbous, these are also seen near sunrise. So you'll see these right before the sun rises rather than right after. And then full moons are only seen from sunrise to sunset. That's why you typically get that beautiful view of the moon rising over the horizon just as the sun is setting. And that's because it's in that part of its orbit where we can't see it until we rotate into this darkness where it would finally be in view. The moon's impact on humans. There are human-made calendars that some scientists place as old as 32,000 years. 32,000! Some recent archaeological findings are from the Ice Age, where hunters carved notches and gouged holes into sticks, reindeer bones, and the tusks of mammoths, depicting the days between each phase. These artifacts are dated 25,000 and 10,000 BC. There are also surviving astronomical records inscribed on oracle bones dating back to the Shang dynasty of the 14th century BC that reveal a Chinese calendar with intercalation of lunar months. The lunar calendar has played a huge role in humans keeping track of time and keeping track of any progress that they might be having. Ancient civilizations and moon cycles. Yeah. The sun, moon, planets, and stars have provided us a reference for measuring the passage of time throughout history. All cultures before recorded history charted the heavenly skies to make some sort of sense of their environment. So ancient civilizations, obviously, they've been around for a long time, but some are far more sophisticated than others. As far back as 5,000 and 6,000 years ago, civilizations in the Middle East and North Africa also made primitive clocks in order to divide their time more precisely. They really wanted to keep track of their time so that they could communicate and that they could predict events. Of primary importance to the Egyptian was the time when the Nile River began its annual flood. This was carefully noted so they knew when to plant and when to harvest. Understanding the lunar cycle allowed them to know where they were at in their year and allowed them to survive and thrive as civilizations because they could use their resources more wisely. Jeez, the moon, am I right? Yeah. Does the moon affect our behavior? Don't be a lunatic. Maybe you've heard that people acting crazy or strange during full moons. There actually isn't any scientific data to back this up. So if someone says that, you call them crazy. The term lunatic actually comes from the Latin word lunaticus, which originally meant madness, thought to have been caused by the moon. Hence Luna. Luna means moon, by the way, everybody. Luna, that's moon. Yeah. There's not a lot of data to back this up. There's no reason to believe that there's a strong effect of the moon on the human body. Currently, there are studies being done, but there's nothing to back it up right now. That doesn't mean that psychologically you might change your behavior slightly. We just don't have a lot of data to back up major shifts in human behavior based on the moon. Fun fact. Sometimes you might notice that the moon looks bigger as it rises. This is actually a moon illusion, and it usually occurs because our frame of reference, in order to compare distances to things, we have to compare with something else. Like I can see how far away that bike is by comparing it to the wall and to the table in front of me. When the moon is lower in the horizon, we can compare it to all those other things. And it's going to look huge. But the higher it gets, we can't compare it to the other things that we know the true size of. And so it's going to look smaller. There's a video there if you want to watch it later. Thanks for listening, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this slideshow of the moon.